Hey everyone, I'm Brian with Aromacup.com. Thanks as always for joining me here in my virtual coffee shop brought to you by Aromacup.com. I've got a side-by-side comparison video for you today. We're going to talk about all the different ways that you can make your own coffee using a Keurig K-Cup single-serve brewer. We're going to show you the differences and how much coffee you get in each of these and the type of coffee each one will brew and all the different options that they offer you. So what I have here, going from my left to right, I have the Keurig My K-Cup option for brewing your own coffee. I have the Solofill Cup. I have just a regular K-Cup. Actually, this is an extra bold K-Cup, and we'll talk about some differences later on. And then finally, I have the Ekobrew Stainless Steel Elite. So we're going to go over all the different features on each of these and give you some comparisons between them. Let's dive right in and make that happen right now. Okay, so to start off, let's talk about the amount of coffee that you can put in each of these brew your own options and how much is included in the average extra bold K-Cup. So starting off again on the left here with the My K-Cup option, I can get about 10 grams of ground coffee into the My K-Cup. That's not too bad, but it does limit you a little bit on how bold you can get your coffee brew to be. Moving over here to the Solofill, I can get about 11 grams of coffee into the Solofill. That gives you definitely more option for being able to get a little bit stronger brew. As we move on to an extra bold K-Cup, an extra bold cup simply means that there's more coffee grounds in this cup. An extra bold has about 12 grams of coffee, so that's going to, of course, give you an extra bold brew. Finally, we move on to the Ekobrew, the Stainless Steel Elite. Here I can do up to 13 grams of coffee, and we've weighed all of these on a scale, so we know that these are pretty accurate. So I can do about 13 grams of coffee in an Ekobrew Stainless Steel Elite, making this guy the winner if you want to get the absolute most bold cup of coffee out of your single-serve brew-your-own option. So let's dive in and brew some coffee and talk about each of these brew-your-own options at the same time. Let's start with the My K-Cup. This is a great way to be able to make your own cup of coffee using your own grounds, using a Keurig single-serve K-Cup brewer. It's real easy to use. Just simply fill the inner foil up to just about the top. Don't overfill it because you don't want to get water overflowing. Place that into the My K-Cup and then close the lid over it. Now, that's a benefit, is that you can make your own coffee. What are the drawbacks with this? It's a little more involved because you have to screw the lid off and various things like that. It can't hold as much coffee as some of these other options. And another thing that is a little bit of a pain with it is that in order to use it, you have to actually remove the brew basket from your Keurig brewer. So you need to reach in and pop out that brew basket. And the reason for that is, you notice these look pretty much the same. That's because this is actually going to replace the brew basket in our single-serve brewer. So those are some of the cons. The pros, obviously, we've talked about. So let's just go ahead and brew, because again, no matter what, you're going to be able to quickly and easily brew a cup of coffee using an option like this one. So we're just going to place our tumbler and go ahead and brew about an 8-ounce cup of coffee. All right, so there's our cup of coffee from the My K-Cup option. And this is by Keurig, of course. This was their way of giving you an option to make your own coffee, making use of a single-serve K-Cup brewer. So that's that one right there. Let's go ahead and move on to the Solofill. Now, the Solofill is a great way to be able to make your own coffee. It's definitely one of my favorites when it comes to using my Keurig machine and brewing my own coffee. Again, I can get about 11 grams worth of coffee into the Solofill, which is great because I can get a nice strong brew. And some of the bonuses of the Solofill are that because it has this flowing system on the top of it, which really ensures that the water really gets all of the coffee grounds there inside the Solofill, you really make sure that you're going to get the most strong brew out of the Solofill. And then because this is the new version, the K3 Chrome, you're going to notice that essentially its entire outer ring is all outlets. So you're going to make sure that you get as much flavor out of the Solofill as possible. Now, one thing that some folks have talked about with options like the Solofill is that they will get coffee grounds ending up in their final beverage. And one of the reasons that that ends up happening typically is because well, it really depends on the ground of coffee that you're going to be using. And there's also no paper filter in an option like the Solofill. Now I have here a K-Cup that I opened up, and in that K-Cup you can see there's a paper filter inside of here. So that paper filter does help to stop any excess grounds from getting out of the brewing cup. So that's something to keep in mind, but typically I've not seen it be too much to put me off of drinking that cup of coffee. So that's probably the only downside. The rest being that, of course, you're going to be green about your coffee making, and you can brew any cup that you would like. So let's go ahead and drop this into our Keurig machine. Again, I've put my brew basket back into the machine because I need that in order to be able to fit the Solofill. And I'm going to brew the same size of coffee that I originally brewed using the My K-Cup option. And there's a cup of coffee from the Solofill, and we'll just put that side by side with the My K-Cup option so that you can see that. You can see I brewed essentially the same brew size. Clean up real easy, just take that Solofill out, do away with the grounds, and now you are ready to brew again. But of course there is going to be a little bit more cleanup anytime that you're working with one of these brew your own options. All right, so let's move on to the Extra Bold K-Cup. Plus of the Extra Bold K-Cup, it's pre-filled. You don't have to do any work here. You just simply take this and drop it into your machine. The downside is going to be that, very simply, there is more waste. You use more plastic. These are not reusable. You're not as green with your coffee making, so on and so forth. Now, with an Extra Bold, you do get 12 grams of coffee in an Extra Bold. Now compare that to a regular K-Cup, and this is just a regular size K-Cup that I have right here. You're only going to get about 10 grams in that. So if you want a stronger brew, you're going to want to use Extra Bold K-Cups. And of course they are pre-filled, which is great. We're going to place that into our Keurig machine, and now we'll go ahead and brew a cup using our Extra Bold K-Cup. And there's our cup of coffee using a Extra Bold K-Cup. And I will say that it does take a little bit longer to brew using a K-Cup, but I think that maybe the extraction process is just a little bit different because there is a little bit more pressure on that K-Cup. And as I say, K-Cups, they really don't have a lot of outlets. They only have that hole that you punch on the bottom and the hole that you punch on the top. So there's not a whole lot of space for that water to go, so it takes a little bit longer to be able to brew. So that is our Extra Bold K-Cup, and of course cleanup is easy because you just simply get rid of that K-Cup. Let's move on finally to the Ekobrew Stainless Steel Elite. And of course this is definitely one of my favorites. I can get about 13 grams of coffee into this. So this is really going to allow me to get the strongest brew of coffee that I would want to get, I think, out of your average brew your own system for a Keurig machine. So we just simply fill it up and then we close the lid. So that's the first plus of the Ekobrew. You can get up to 13 grams of coffee. That's the most you can get into one of these brew your own options. The other plus is because it's stainless steel, it's going to be pretty rugged. The hinge on this is great, and you're going to be able to use this over and over and over again. The only downside that I could really see is that maybe the pricing of these ones is a little bit more prohibitive. It's a little higher. We'll talk about pricing later. And usually you want to have a couple of these around, so you're going to have to buy a couple extras, and that way you're going to be able to brew as much coffee. But there's really not a whole lot of downside here, and you're going to be able to be green about your coffee making, which is great. Brewing is really easy. All you have to do is drop the Ekobrew into the brew basket and just line up these small wings that are on the side of it with the indentations in the brew basket, close it up, and now we're just going to go ahead and brew again, same size of cup of coffee that we've been brewing throughout this entire video. All right, and there's our cup of coffee from the Ekobrew. That's quite a dark brew of coffee. I have to say I'm pretty impressed with that. And of course, cleanup is real easy on the Ekobrew because all you need to do is take it out, empty your spent grounds, and then of course you can continue brewing again. So there are all 4 of these various options. 3 of those brew your own, of course, for the K-Cup, for the Keurig K-Cup based machines. One of them, of course, being the K-Cup itself. Side by side, you can compare color right there, and of course, depending on what you're drinking, you can compare taste as well. All right, let's talk about pricing between all these different options. Starting on my left again with the My K-Cup, you're looking at about $15. That's not too bad. With the Solofill, you're looking at around $18. Also not too bad, but again, you want to keep a couple of these around more than likely. With K-Cups, you're looking at somewhere between 50 to 60 cents per K-Cup. Depends on where you shop and what kind of K-Cup you're buying, but you're looking at about 50 to 60 cents a piece. Then finally, on the Ekobrew, you're looking at about $25 for the stainless steel Elite version. So that is a little bit more expensive and definitely the most expensive of all of these, but the savings that you get over buying just K-Cups, if you are using a brew your own option, are pretty much going to be very immediate. And so that really depends on how much money you want to save and of course the type of beverage that you want to brew if you're going into the world of single serve brew your own options. Bottom line between all of these, the single serve do-it-yourself options, brew your own options, being the My K-Cup, the Solofill, and the Ekobrew, are all really good ways to be green about your coffee making and to allow you to, of course, brew any type of coffee that you would like to brew. They also allow you to very quickly and easily make loose teas, which is great. They do take a little bit more work. You have to fill them up, you have to clean them, various things like that. You do not have to do that with a K-Cup, but of course, with a K-Cup, you have more waste because you're throwing plastic away, and you probably will, in the long run, have more cost because you're going to be buying K-Cup after K-Cup, whereas with a brew your own option, you simply need to get that and then buy any coffee that you would like. You still get just about as much variety between all of these, and you still get the ease with all of these when you come right down to it because you're still using a machine that's going to brew that cup of coffee really, really quickly. So the absolute bottom line here is if you want to be green about your coffee making and hopefully save a little bit of money, check out a single serve brew your own option. If you are looking to just have the quick and easy way of making a cup of coffee, you can stick with K-Cups, and of course that's been working great for us for quite some time now. It just depends on what you prefer in your own at-home coffee shop. So there you go, guys. That is a side-by-side comparison of 4 great ways to be able to make coffee with a Keurig single-serve K-Cup brewer. I hope you found it useful. As always, I'm Brian, coming to you from my virtual coffee shop here at Aromacup.com. I want to thank you guys for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.